This is Amplifying Autism, where every voice matters and every story shines. Join us as autistic authors, professionals, and trailblazers share their journeys, real stories, and real insight from those changing the world, one conversation at a time. Welcome to Amplifying Autism. I'm your host, Wendy Marsh. My guest today, Dr. Jennifer Cork, is an autistic doctor of social work and a licensed social worker. She specializes in the treatment of neurodivergent individuals who also have other mental health conditions, including those with high support needs. She's the author of What's Your Anxiety Level? Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Neurodivergent Children and Teens with Co-occurring Anxiety Disorders. She's a dedicated advocate whose passions include increasing mental health awareness and access to mental health care for the neurodivergent community. She's also the mom, spouse, and sister of some awesome neurodivergent humans. Jennifer, I'm delighted to have you on the podcast today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
And Dr. Jennifer Cork, I'm going to want to talk about your book in a minute because I'm excited about that. But first, I'd like to know a little bit about your diagnosis story. You didn't always know that you were autistic, did you?
No, I didn't. So I started working with children with disabilities after I graduated with my bachelor's degree about 20 some years ago. And so I really didn't know a lot about autism previous to doing that work. And so I started out in the education system and then transitioned to working in disability services. I was working with mostly children, a couple teenagers, and then in 2014 is when I transitioned to mental health. And so I was working with kids, teens, and then now adults with primarily neurodivergent individuals. And so where I lived, I was mostly seeing the adults I was seeing were mostly higher support need individuals. So people that maybe were not able to live on their own or were not their own guardians. And so they, their autism looked a lot different than mine. And so over the years, I started, kind of having this little question in the back of my mind. Like, I knew that I struggled with social anxiety and, always wanted to know the social rules before I went somewhere. I had auditory aversions and things, but I also, anytime I would have those questions like, well, maybe I'm autistic, I would think, well, I don't want to be one of those people that's like, everyone's a little autistic. So I would push it out of my brain. But during my doctoral degree, a couple things happened. So first we moved to Oregon and I started seeing a lot more high masking autistic adults, a lot more women that were recently, late diagnosed. And one of the things that I did with clients that were late diagnosed was going through all the ways I had seen autism traits present over the years, just to kind of give them like, here's all, a variety of ways that these traits can present. And then I would invite them to share what they related to, and what they shared, I started relating to a lot more. But I also, during my doctoral program, did a deep dive into what the latest research on what autism and ADHD looks like in women and girls. And most of that research is less than 5 years old. And so,
Yes.
With having more, working with more professional autistic women that were high masking, while also looking at the research, what, as we reconceive what is autism, then it was no longer able to just push that, like, push that off. And so I,
Yes.
I sought out a diagnosis a couple of years ago. So
So here you are.
here I am.
And you're not only an autistic doctor of social work, but also an author. And I happen to have your book right here. Um, what's your anxiety level? And I just want to say one of the things that I love about this book, um, well, many of us know that cognitive behavioral therapy has for years been very effective with very typical patients
Mhm.
and has not been successful with autistic patients, for one thing. But a lot of people won't even try it with anyone that has intellectual disabilities or what they call
Mhm.
high support needs kind of things.
Right.
Um, could you talk a little bit about this book and what what I love about it, but what makes it unique? And it is unique in the in the world of this kind of books. So could you tell our listeners a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I started my master's program in 2011. I knew that I wanted to keep working with the disability with neurodivergent clients in the mental health system. So I started researching what were the modalities that I should be using, expecting there to be all of this evidence. And this was, 2011. There
Mhm.
wasn't any, or there was not very much. So I
Yes.
remember writing a paper on the topic, like what modalities should be used with autistic clients, and barely finding enough research to meet criteria to write the paper.
Oh,
And so what I found was that CBT seemed to be a promising intervention. It was really the only thing I could find that anyone was looking at. And so it's something I've been studying, for 15 years. And it's interesting because the research has consistently shown that it can be an effective treatment modality. It's a promising, it hasn't met evidence-based criteria yet, but that takes a
yes.
lot of time.
Yes.
But it's consistently shown to be promising. And what more recent research, because there's definitely a lot more than there was in 2011, more recent research has shown that it's true that if you use CBT that's created for neurotypical people, it doesn't work as well for autistic people. Just like, if you're using CBT created for white Americans, it's not going to work for people in India.
Good
So
point.
it
Yes.
needs to be culturally competent. And so CBT that's created for autistic people or for people with ADHD, for people with intellectual disability, there's a lot less research for that last category. But when it's created with those communities in mind, then it is effective. And so we definitely need more research. We need to know what modifications are the most effective that should be in place. They're researching modifications, but there's no like, here's the 5 things that need to be there.
Yes. Not enough.
It's just, here's what people are doing. And, it hasn't gone beyond that. But so the book comes from the fact when I graduated in 2014 and I went to um, treat the clients that I had been working with, the same community, but in the mental health setting, there were very few resources for me to use. And so I'd taken a CBT elective in my master's program. I did lots of reading, and I also had an education degree. And so I took my 10 years experience working with the population, my ed degree, all the study I did in my master's, and I made up my own interventions. And
Good.
so, it was kind of trial and error. I was not setting out to create a CBT curriculum. It just really had to do with that there wasn't anything I could find that was working, and so the methods that I created were working. And so that's when, after several years of this being really successful, my husband started to encourage me to write a book and try to get it published. And I said, nobody's going to publish a random LCSW in North Idaho. And so I finally said, okay, well, then I'm going to go get my doctoral degree. And then I can do a little bit more research. And I felt like a little more having doctor in front of my name would give me a little more credibility. And so this was part of my capstone project for my doctoral degree, was writing this up. And so um, here we are.
Here we are.
And as far as I know, My book is the only resource available like this that has modifications for higher need kids or kids and teens with intellectual disabilities. So if one intervention isn't working, I think that the main one I've used over the years is that if the incredible 5-point scale, that Likert scale, doesn't work, which it doesn't make sense if a child has a learning disability that numbers don't make sense or for other reasons, then I have a modification where we do how big is your anger and use different sizes and use the metaphor of different sized balls because they come in all sizes. And so maybe I let them pick the ball, but the little one might be marble, the big one's an exercise ball. And so I remember this was actually an adult that when he was able to say that his emotions, but not how big they were. So we didn't know, like, are you a little bit mad or really mad? And when he finally caught on, and I asked him, he'd gotten in a fight with parents, and I said, "How big was your mad?" And he told me it was as big as the sun, and I knew that that was pretty big.
That's big anger.
Yes,
Oh, but how great that he had a way to communicate to you
right.
how he
Yeah,
felt. Uh,
yeah,
Back when I was working in the school system, 30, 40 years ago, um, counseling was not even offered or available to students who had intellectual disability. They just said, "Oh, it won't work." And
yeah.
nobody was
Mhm.
saying, "But what can work?" But don't they have anxiety too? Don't they
Right.
have feelings that they wanna learn
And
to
we
control?
didn't think that they did for a long time, and I know
Sadly.
when I started out in 2014, the state I was working in, we had to do prior authorizations for therapy, and the company that was in charge of Medicaid billing for the state, they would see autism or intellectual disability and would deny my clients therapy. And would say these people belong in disability services. And so myself and the person in charge of the prior authorizations had to explain to them the difference between disability services and mental health services. And we also had
Yes.
to reach out to the state's disability rights organization, where we got a statement from, I think, the American Academy of Pediatrics or something similar, that said that disabled people could have mental health as well,
Thank you.
and that they benefited from therapy. And then they backed
Yes.
off, but it was kind of shocking because, and
Yeah.
this was 15 years ago that this was happening at the state level.
Yeah. And, and I think still today, yours is the only book that actually addresses this. Um, Hopefully, other people will replicate what you've been doing and, get the word out because, people deserve to have the services that are tailored to them. All people do.
Right.
So, do you have any other projects coming up? Anything else that you wanna share with us?
So many projects.
Yay.
So the next project that I've started doing research on is that I would really like to create an adult version for adults with intellectual disabilities and level 2 autism. I only know of one resource. There's a DBT manual for intellectually disabled adults by Dr. Julie Brown that's excellent. But there's no one method that works for every person. And I know when what I was doing with kids and teens was working, and I just started trying things out with adults, and I use the basics of my manual even with neurotypical adults,
Yeah,
because it's
why
really
not?
about helping people better understand and communicate what they're feeling, as well as understanding their stress responses and how to choose healthy ways to manage stress that works for everyone regardless of their age or their neurotype. And so I have done this successfully with adults, and I feel like they deserved their own book. And so
Yes, please.
that's my next project. So it's probably going to be a while, but yeah, I've started the research.
Well, wonderful. You'll have to come back on the podcast and talk about that when it comes out. Now, you didn't always know that you were autistic, but you always were, weren't you?
Mhm.
Uh, People that are listening right now, a lot of them might be where you were a few years ago. Some might be just suspecting, but thinking, oh, no, that's probably not it. And some might have just been told, you have this diagnosis and might be shocked or relieved, thank goodness. There's a lot of feelings that are going on with people who are late diagnosed with autism or with other neurodiversity uh, types of situations. Do you have any advice or words of wisdom or encouragement that you would want to share with listeners who are now where you were just a few years ago?
Yeah, well, I know it's kind of a joke in the community that neurotypical people don't obsessively look up and wonder if they're neurodivergent.
True.
Um, so if you have questions, I think reaching out to the community, looking for if you want an official diagnosis, I think that's a challenge to find psychologists that are up on the latest research, that are familiar with high masking adults, but taking your time to vet those individuals. But then I think just working with someone, whether it's formal in therapy or just a friend or a community where you can process, a lot of my clients that I work with, they almost need to go back and relook at their life. Like,
Yes. Through a new
what were
lens.
through this new lens, this new
Yeah.
information that you have about yourself. And there's a lot of I think grief and anger at times where people were mistreated. A lot of the things I think about for myself is, especially with my auditory aversions, being told like you can't hear that or that doesn't bother you. I remember a client telling me they went to uh, a private school that used corporal punishment, and they were recounting all the times that they were spanked, and a lot of the things they were spanked for was directly related to autism. They
Oh.
were very sensory seeking with taste, and so they were eating something that they thought was really good. They didn't understand not everyone would think that. They shared it with a friend, and the school saw that as, oh, you were being mean and playing a
Oh.
prank. And that was one of the things that this person had been punished for. That was autism.
Mhm.
Both
Yeah.
that they thought it was good, and also that they didn't understand that most people wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
So
It-
I think there's a lot of that, like looking back at social rejection, looking back at the difficulties in making friends or keeping friends, or the way family responded, or struggles in the workplace. There's,
Mhm.
this whole new piece of information that is huge that was missing. Um,
Yes.
and so that's where a lot of the why I go through the traits of autism and the ways I've seen it present is because I get a lot of that. The autistic people, other people do that.
Yeah.
So,
Uh, and it can feel like gaslighting when someone says,
mhm,
you can't hear that or that doesn't
right,
taste good. And it's like, well, I thought it tasted good.
right,
If people tell you that your reality is not real, it gets
right.
hard to trust yourself and the world around you, I would imagine.
Right. Well, and I know before my diagnosis, a lot of my clients would tell me that, you listen so much better than my last therapist. And I would, kind of pat myself on the back and, oh, I'm a good listener. But I
You
realize now
are.
it's because what they were telling me, it made sense to me in a way that it didn't
Yeah.
to their neurotypical therapists. And so I think that's any other like professionals working with the community. And this is something when I do training projects, whether I'm talking to preschool teachers or other mental health professionals, that It's really common for neurodivergent people to be told that their reality is not real. So if someone says this is hard for me or this bothers me or whatever it is, just believe them. Um,
Exactly. Just believe
so
them.
I think that with sorry, with
Mhm.
invisible disabilities,
Yes.
it's not as concrete as someone in a wheelchair saying, "Oh, I can't
Uh-uh.
go up these steps." Like that makes a lot of sense to
Yeah.
everyone. But when you say, I can't change my plans mid mid
Yeah.
project, being told, "Oh, you have to," or "Yes, you can." Um, that's a very abstract concept,
Yeah.
but it's the reality for that person.
And even being told, "Well, you did it last week, therefore you can always do it." Well, maybe
Mhm.
today a dog barked and startled them, or something,
Right.
some sensory or social event made it so that
Mhm.
they can't do today what they could do yesterday. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's especially true for individuals that have ADHD, that greater variability of performance, that sometimes they're on it,
Mhm.
but they got a good night's sleep and they had a great morning and they had extra free time and maybe got to hang out with friends, and then they're on the ball, and the next couple days later the neighbor's dog kept them up all night. They were rushed in the morning because they overslept, and they're late, and now they can't do what they could do even a day or two before.
Yeah.
But that's the message that they get from other people is, you're just
Mhm.
not trying hard enough because
Oh, I hate that. Or
yes.
or you're lazy, it's like, no,
Mhm.
that's not laziness. That's not what
Right.
that is. Lazy people aren't struggling to do the thing and trying really hard.
Right.
Uh, I don't know anybody who's lazy, honestly. Before I ask where people can get in touch with you, is there anything that you wish that I had asked you that I didn't ask you that you'd like to talk about?
I don't think so. Yeah, not that I can think of.
Okay. Well, I do wanna hold up your book one more time because I love it, and I love
It's
the colors
upside
they use
down.
on the cover. Um, oh, and it was upside down. You'll actually see it like this when you go to buy it. It will not be like
And
this.
I got to pick the colors. Blue is my favorite
Good.
color. I wear blue most of the time, and so
This actually matches what you're wearing. I'm
yes.
so glad that they let you have some say in that. I think
Yeah.
publishers are not required to listen to authors, and I love it when my people listen to me. I'm glad yours listen
Yeah.
to you too.
Yep, they let me pick the picture and the design and everything, so that was fun.
Yeah, and it is beautiful. So I'm sure that people are going to want to either get in touch with you or follow you or find your book. How can they? What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
So the best way is to go to drjennifercork.com. That should have links to my Facebook and Instagram, which I'm still trying to figure out Instagram, as
Same.
well as I will put the link on there. I just started a Psychology Today blog. I have one blog
Oh,
post, and so my goal is to try to do at least one a month. So next month,
nice.
I'm hoping to put on there a blog about autism and empathy. So it is false that autistic people do not have empathy. And in the 20 some years that I've worked with autistic people, I have never met any autistic person with no empathy. It just
Neither have
sometimes
I.
it's different.
Not one.
It's
Not one.
different, not gone. And so,
Yes. Sometimes it's
um,
intense, way
mhm.
more than
Yeah,
other
and
people's.
I
Yeah.
know that, hyper empathy is much more common in the autistic population, and you see
Yeah.
people like Greta Thunberg. I think that's exactly what drives her to do the work that she does, is
Yes.
that sense of, I see the problems in the world and I can't let them go.
Yeah. She
So
cannot ignore when she can do something about it. And I
right.
love her. Yeah.
Yeah. So so yeah, if they go to drjennifercork.com, there's also a contact form where they can
Oh,
can
good.
email me and link to my blog is on there, my newsletter, sign up, and everything. So
Okay. Well, and we'll have that information in the show notes too, so that people don't have to have memorized that.
Right.
They can just read it.
And also a lot of times people mishear it's cork like in a wine bottle, not
Yes, Cork, spelled like a cork in a wine bottle. I like that.
Yes.
And it's all one word, Dr.
Yes.
Jennifer Cork, right?
Yep.
Okay, well, good. Please go to Dr. Jennifer Cork's website and see what is there. And thank you so much for being here. It has been just a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to get to spend this time with you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, and we'll see you all next time. It was such a pleasure to have my friend, Dr. Jennifer Cork, on the podcast today. I highly recommend her book, What's Your Anxiety Level?, for everyone who works with autistic, intellectually disabled, or otherwise neurodivergent children and teens. 3 important takeaways for me from this episode are: first, people with high support needs can benefit from modified cognitive behavioral therapy, which has been designed for them. Second, autistic people do not lack empathy. That's a myth. Some have different, extreme, or hyper empathy, like Greta Thunberg, who cares so deeply about the world. And finally, if you have recently learned that you are autistic, or you think you might be, Jennifer suggests that you find someone who is neurodiversity affirming and who understands masking to work with you on processing your new diagnosis. You deserve to be understood. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Jennifer Cork as much as I did. Thanks for listening. This is Wendell Whitcomb Marsh, and I'll see you next time on Amplifying Autism. You've been listening to Amplifying Autism, celebrating the voices that shape a more understanding world. Don't miss the next episode. More stories, more insight, and more voices that matter.